Hi, I'm Rob, and I'm coming to you from the Design to Manufacture channel today to show you guys a little bit of a tutorial on Fusion 360. Now, this video is aimed at starting off with our two-dimensional shapes and learning a little bit about the user interface for Fusion 360. So if you guys are new to CAD modeling or just starting out with Fusion 360, this video is perfect for you. So hang on around and hopefully you'll learn a little bit and we'll get through a basic little project together, learning some of these tools. Alrighty guys, so welcome to the Fusion interface. Right up the top here, we have our toolbar and we have a whole lot of menus available to us along the edge here. So we've got a create menu, automate, modify, assemble, and so on along the track. All right, for our first couple of videos, we are going to be living in the basics functions of design. All right, and we're living with solid design. We're not playing with any of the other settings that we have just up here. We're just going to look at the basics of design, and we're going to be looking at some of our basic settings. The more you guys play with this stuff, the more that you're going to get familiar and learn some more intricacies. But just to start off with, it's better to stick with the basics. Also, down the bottom here, you've got a few options like orbiting tools and pan tools and stuff like that. So that's all down here for you guys if you need to change it, need to set anything up or anything like that. And then finally, we have our view cube up the top right-hand corner here. This is how we change our view and make things move around for us, all right? So we can simply click on a corner to get that one facing us, or an edge, or a face to get it facing how we want, all right? And we can spin around up here as well as using our orbit tool, all right? They all work for us, all right? If you get really mixed up and a bit dizzy, all right, you probably just want to come up here and hit your home button, and that will pop you straight back to where you were at the beginning, which is the standard view, showing you your top, front, and right-hand angles of your shape, all right? Now, we're going to go into two-dimensional sketching in a second, but first it's really important that we talk about why we want to do 2D sketching. This is a 3D software package, and really what we're pushing this towards what this is pushed towards is designing and simulating some three-dimensional objects, parts, etc. that you can create later on down the track. So again, why do we want to know two dimensions? Because it helps us draw more complex shapes. You can always generate some standard three-dimensional objects, but when you come to a more complex shape, it's usually going to be drawn with a face view. And what that means is if I flick into this design I've got up here, which is my coffee cup drawing, I quickly whip this one up because I couldn't think of anything better to draw three-dimensionally, and this was sitting right in front of me. What we've got here is a coffee cup, and depending on the view we select, either the top, front, or the right, it will change what it looks like. So, for example, looking at it from the top, you can see that we see a circle and a rectangle with a slightly rounded edge down the bottom here. That's all we see. So if we were to draw this, we would be able to stretch that shape up using the extrude button, and we would get most of our work done for making this coffee cup, and then we just have to fiddle around and tidy it up. All right, same deal if we pick the right face and we drew this shape here, all right? Or again, if we pick the front face, we can draw large components or more complex components by understanding what they'll look like from the three different views, whether that's the top, the front, or the right, or left, it doesn't really matter. But understanding what your shape needs to look like at the end and how to get it there is probably the key part of using any CAD package. And in this case, we're going to be looking at how to start you guys off on those two-dimensional sketches. All right, so we're going to jump straight into our blank document here, and we're going to go to our create menu. Now, I'm hoping you guys can see this. This is my second crack at this video because these menus didn't come up in the first screen grab that I did. So hopefully you guys can see this create sketch button. It is the second one down when I click on create, and I'm going to click a create sketch. And it gives me the option of the 3 different planes that I want to draw on. So that plane here is the bottom, and that's what I would draw if I was looking down on my shape from the top. This here is the front plane, and this is what we'd be drawing if we looked at it from the front. And this plane here is the right plane, which is what we'd be looking at if we look at it from the right. We're going to do our first design from the top down, so we're going to look at it from the top. And you can see as soon as I click that plane, it drops me into a 2-dimensional view. All right, again, looking from the top. Now, what you'll see as well is you'll see a grid, and you'll see these numbers. These numbers are in millimeters, and at the moment with my current zoom level, these grid squares are 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter squares. This is one of my favorite parts about Fusion, is there's no ambiguity with the dimensioning, which is an issue you'll see in some other packages. All right. And then if I zoomed in further, and you'll see this in a second, it should snap in at a certain point. I'll get 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter cube. So if I'm looking to do something a little bit more detailed, I can see some smaller cubes. And then if I zoom out far enough, it drops to a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter cube. It tries to be adaptive to what you need, depending on how far zoomed in you are. But for now, we're just going to stick with the 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter grid and get started here. Hopefully you all saw when we jumped into this as well that we had a whole heap of different tools come up along the top here. So we're in a sketch menu now. So we were in solid, and then when we've gone to make a sketch, this little menu has popped up and a whole lot of new tools just popped up as well. All right. Again, like last time, all of the basic ones are over on the left-hand side. The right-hand side has a little bit more intricate stuff. We're not going to be looking over here to start off with. We're just going to start playing with some basics. And there's nothing more basic than a rectangle. Now, like I was saying before, I'm hoping you guys can see these little drop-down menus this time. All right, so on the Create button here, you will see that I can go down and see a whole heap of different options for different tools. Assuming you can see this, if you can't, all right, just go along on your own device with your own software package, and you should be able to see rectangles and a couple of different options and circles and so on and so forth down the list. All right, but we are going to start today off with drawing a rectangle. This is the general start for most of my beginner projects, is doing like a little nameplate or a name tag, and that's what we're going to move towards over the next 2 videos. This video will be on 2-dimensional sketching and getting familiar with the user interface. The next short video will be on how to turn our 2-dimensional sketch into a 3-dimensional object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click, and I'm going to find that if I start dragging my mouse across, I get a rectangle. And hopefully you guys can see all the dimensioning measurements that are coming up. All right. Again, if not, if this is still playing up, then I'm hoping you guys can follow along at home on your own device. But you'll notice that when I drag it across, the numbers change. All right. But it automatically snaps to our grid, which is super handy if I was going to make a 50 by 25 mil shape. All right, which is where I'm sitting at the moment. So 50 millimeters across, 25 millimeters up. But if I'm not going to make a 5 millimeter shape, it can be a little bit or a 5 millimeter increment shape. It can be a little bit fiddlier as we're dragging across to get an accurate grab on a number. All right. So what we can do is, if you can see it, you'll notice that the bottom dimension right now is highlighted blue. And that means that if I type in on my number pad, I can edit my dimension. So I've just typed in 51 now, and now it locks that dimension. So it's no longer coming across when I drag. All right. And then I can do the same with my height dimension. If I press the tab button, hit the tab button, and it will highlight my height. And then I can type in 26 for the height and hit enter. When I hit enter, it will generate my rectangle, and you can see that the measurements come up like this. Now, when we get into more complex shapes, these measurements can get in the way. So one handy thing to learn now is you can click on it, and when it goes blue, if you hit your delete button, they will disappear, all right? And that gets rid of those dimensions, and it can alleviate a little bit of confusion if you are struggling with so many lines being on the screen if you've got a more complex drawing. Now, I'm going to leave them in there, so I'm going to undo what I just did. And this is the other key step that I want you guys to learn. Undo. You can go up to the undo button up here, or you can just hit Control Z. Control plus Z on a Windows device, or Command Z, I believe, on a Mac, will get you guys back. So if you've made a mistake, you can edit that nice and easy. Beautiful. So we've created our first two-dimensional shape. Now, this object or project that I'm making right now is more of a key tag. So I need somewhere for my key ring to go through. So to do that, I need a little circle. So I'm going to use my center diameter circle. The key part of that is diameter. So when I click on this circle, you'll see I'll get a little target, all right? And that nicely clicks anywhere that the grid is. So that's why I quickly zoomed in just a second ago, is so that I can snap onto my millimeter by millimeter grids. Because if I zoom back out again, it doesn't snap anymore, and it's a little bit fiddly. So I'm zooming in so I can see my millimeters. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters down. Click there and drag out. And again, this is the diameter of the circle, not the radius. This is the diameter. So when I hit 3 and hit enter, that is a 3 millimeter circle, all right? And that's going to give me a little hole for my keyring to go through. Now we're going to play with a couple more functions now, and the first of that is our line tool. All right, so we can use our line tool to draw lines on our shape. And in this case, I'm just going to draw a line to cut a corner off. All right, so I'm going to click 5 millimeters up from the origin, and then I'm going to come across to 5 millimeters across. Now you will see that it will show me a degree for that line, which is at 45 degrees, and a length. Now I can obviously go further, all right, but it likes to automatically select, again, grid points, which makes it easier, or I can type in specifics if I want a certain degree and a certain length. For this case, it's just going to be from corner to corner there, and we're going to just draw that line here. Now, there's another way that we could have done this exact same function, and it's called a chamfer. So a chamfer takes a 45, or usually if we do an equal distance chamfer, which is our first option in the modifier here, that one will take the same amount from both sides, and it'll leave you a nice 45 degree. So I can click on this and come in 5 millimeters, and it will do the exact same cut on that corner of my rectangle. The biggest difference is A, it will put in a dimension, and B, it actually deletes the old section, all right, whereas this one doesn't. All right, that's not a big deal. We don't need to delete this to extrude and keep that cut off. But if it does bother you, you can go up to the trimming tool and click away any unwanted lines like so, and that will tidy up your design as well. All right, but again, I'm going to show you guys why that doesn't matter in our next video. And finally, this is the very last thing we're going to do for this video. So thank you so much, guys, for sticking around so long. We're going to just jump a fillet. So our fillet, as you can see by the image, is a nice rounded corner. We're going to trot a fillet onto this corner here. And again, we're going to keep it at 5 mil. We're just keeping it pretty uniform all the way around. All right. And just deleting that measurement there because I don't need it. All right. You can see this is our final shape on our 2 dimensions. All right. This is important to note why I did this drawing. you can see how complex of a shape this is. This isn't just drawing a rectangular prism, which there are tools for. This is drawing a more complex 2D sketch, so I've got less steps in my build process. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for tuning into this first tutorial for the Design to Manufacture channel and our first video on Fusion 360. Make sure you guys like and subscribe this if you want to see more of this sort of content, and flick on your notifications to make sure that you get notified every time we drop a new video. We're aiming for at least one new video every week on some various various platforms, but we should be hitting at least finishing this project off for Fusion in the next week. So make sure if you're interested and you want to keep tuned that you flick on those notification bells so you can see when the next part of this comes live. Until then, thanks so much, and I'll catch you later.